actually need to take a roll call vote.
Oh, okay.
They're not, they don't do open meeting, but it's still a good idea.
Yeah, sure. We can do it. I mean, we didn't,
Yeah.
this is not a formal meeting since we're an NGO, but okay. Myra Walsh,
Here.
Nancy McKenna. Muted. Nancy, you're muted.
Okay, here.
Wim Wilbur,
I'm here.
Charles Phillips,
Here.
Rich Feely here. Our other 7 board members are not
Great. Well, welcome everybody from the town staff. I see Marcia Rasmussen's here. Welcome. And Elizabeth Hughes is here. Welcome. Yeah. And it's hard to just look around right at all the people. So Jennifer Goldson's here. Jennifer, you want to unmute and introduce yourself?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Hold on. There we go. I'm Jen Goldson, planning consultant, and I'm happy to be here. And my colleague Delaney Almond is here. Delaney, could you unmute for a second?
Hi, nice to meet everybody.
Great, we're happy to be here.
Great, great. We have a few members from the League of Women Voters, Ingrid and Claire. If you want to, say hi to everybody, you can while we're doing this.
Happy to do so. Chair of the League of Women Voters Housing Issues Committee.
Very good. And Claire?
Trouble here. Yes, Claire Gordon, also a member of the committee.
Great.
I guess I'm not working on Zoom well, right?
Not a problem. And Jennifer Polito's here, the Executive Director of the Housing Authority.
Hey everyone, nice to see you all.
Yep. And Linda Ziffrin, I don't know you, Linda. Do you want to say hi and associate yourself with a group or just?
I'm on the League of Women and Voters Concord Carlisle Housing Committee as well.
Oh, very good. Very good. Welcome. And I think, is that everyone? Carlin's here and she's listening in, and Ray Andrews from FinCom is listening in as well. And I think that is everybody. So welcome. We have really a 2-part agenda today. One is the standard, if you will, update from the different groups in terms of their efforts and projects and town meeting specifically. This is why we have the meeting, the Housing Roundtable, one in the fall as things are coming together for town meeting, and one in the spring as we march towards town meeting. And then starting after that, directly after that, would be the kickoff for the housing production plan. So we'll just get right to it, and we'll hear from, I think I put on the agenda first, we'll hear from the Concord Housing Development Corporation.
Thanks, Liz. So as many of you probably know, our biggest project right now is what we call the Assabet River Bluff project. And that is the acquisition of approximately 7 acres of land off of Old Marlborough Road and at the intersection of Upland Road. We've got an agreement between open space interests and Chdc. The open space folks are represented by Sudbury Valley trustees, Concord Land Conservation Trust, and they have a affiliate entity called Concord Open Land Foundation, I believe it is. We are hopefully a day or 2 away from signing a purchase and sale agreement with the sellers of the property. As proposed, we'll be purchasing the property for a combined purchase price of $2.8 million. 6 acres plus or minus will be set aside and protected as open space, and 1 acre, including an existing 2-family house, will be set aside for affordable housing purposes. We're looking at renovating the existing 2-unit structure and then hoping to construct 3 more housing units on the 1 acre for a maximum of 5 units. What else? We've got approximately 60 days to do additional due diligence once we sign the P&S, which we will begin promptly. And We are looking for approval from town meeting through the CPC for purchase price, portion of the purchase price. And the open space interests are also engaged in a fundraising campaign. So if you're interested, keep your eye out for that. But so far, so good, although the P&S has taken longer than anyone expected. There haven't been any issues that we could not overcome. The other thing that our CHDC met this morning, the other thing that may be of interest to the group is the CHDC small grant program. We offer grants to income eligible people who have typically somewhat emergent needs for improvements or repairs to their homes. Our program is quickly running out of money, and so we'll be back at it in the relatively near future, investigating other sources of funds to help replenish that account to enable us to continue the grant program. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you. Any questions for the CHDC before we move on?
Lee, any update on Junction Village, or are they still looking at their numbers again?
Yeah, we met with them probably 2 weeks ago, and the latest update was they were just waiting for appraisals to come in to support another internal financing source to help bridge their gap to enable them to close on the project. The dramatic increase in construction costs over the past year or two have slowed them down a bit, but they remain optimistic and leaving no stone unturned. So we're hoping that will close maybe late summer or the fall.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Question for Lee.
Hi.
I was just curious, Rick Eifler, Concord Housing Authority, are there any thoughts on how the affordable units will be built at Assabet River Bluff at this point, or are you just working on the land purchase?
The present plan is to put the remaining parcel out for RFP to the development community. We're in the process right now of doing some planning exercises in terms of siting and scale of what those units might look like. We've got alternative scenarios in the case that for some reason becomes not economically viable, which could include land banking it, potentially selling it at market value to the contiguous open space owners, or maybe worst case, selling it at market rate to a developer and then returning the available proceeds proportionally from where they came.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There is the existing house on the property with 2 units on it. So part of the land banking might be just to renovate that house and just to restrict and have those 2 units as the first step, while new construction gets evaluated for the other new units. So,
Thanks, Liz.
Keith?
Yeah, I had a question about that. I heard Lee say that he spoke of a maximum of 5 units, and I would dare say it's 5 units. It's not up to it. So what I'm hearing is that maybe 2 units are going to be constructed or going to be rehabbed, and the other 3 won't be built. That would be with somebody else's money, as far as I can see, because that was not what the Affordable Housing Trust agreed to. So I'm concerned about that direction, if that's where it's headed.
That's definitely not where it's headed. I just wanted to outline, we've gotten this question from FinCom and a number of other interested parties. What is your plan? And amongst, our plan obviously is first priority is to develop 3 units of restricted affordable housing. But we've established, I guess, a list of well, right, but 3 new, we've got 2 that we expect to be converted relatively easily. But as a backup plan, we came up with a number of scenarios in case it just is not viable. And as I did mention, if something less than 5 were to be created, then if funds are received one way or the other from CHDC, those funds would be returned to the sources from which they came. But we're full steam ahead on 5 units.
Yeah, I think it's five or bust. Frankly, that I don't think you get to spend the money on 2 units and then decide you don't want to do the other 3. But that conversation can take place offline from this meeting. But I do think it would, just based on the feedback that the trust heard from the select board this past Monday night, when we were there getting approval of our interim policy guidelines for the trust. I think it'd be very important to have for town meeting, some kind of scenario back of the envelope or whatever that said, what's the best case of what does the cost of developing 5 units look like? How much additional money you're going to need? We have the trust, we still have $580,000 in our fund that could be available. We're looking to get another 500,000 out of either town meeting or from the select board through ARPA funding. And even if you got to use all of that money for this, it seems to me that it takes it up to a per unit cost that's still below what we might have at other, with other alternatives that might be available, other opportunities that might be available. So I'd like to see every effort made to convince the voters that we can do 5 units there and crunch the numbers and show us. So that's the agreement that we signed on to, I think, with the MOU, and we're happy to help make it a reality. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Great. Any other follow-ups for the CHDC? We can go right into you, Keith, to the Affordable Housing Trust. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much. A lot has happened since our last quarterly Concord Housing Roundtable meeting back in November. Later that month of November, the Declaration of Trust that establishes our Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust was approved and filed at the Registry of Deeds. In December, the select board voted to transfer to the trust the remaining funds. As you recall, there'd been a total of $1.5 million appropriated by the last 3 town meetings for affordable housing. And those funds, the balance of them, were transferred into the trust. And we have been monitoring them since then. We announced at our last quarterly housing roundtable that we were going to be embarking on a process of developing proposed guidelines for the trust and seeking all of your input. And we're very happy that we got to meet with each of the housing groups here at CHDC, the Housing Authority, and the Foundation, and appreciate all the input that we got. And we're delighted that we were able to bring a set of guidelines to the select board this past Monday night and got their approval. Importantly, what we were hearing you say is that what we needed most is a set of interim guidelines for what do we work on right now. We had identified 3 goals. As you're aware, let me back up. The guidelines that we are to adopt are to be reflective of the town's housing goals, and that they're subject to approval by the select board. So with Liz's help and your input, we identified the three housing town housing goal documents as the Envision Concord 2018, the Housing Production Plan from 2015, and the Community Preservation Committee's criteria for community housing projects. And those informed the guidelines that we developed. I think I've sent them out to all of the groups here. They're available at the webpage, the trust webpage at the town's website. And importantly, we saw that there's as much as we would like to develop the big goals for and long-term goals that were envisioned but back at the 2019 town meeting, when there were a package of measures approved, establishing or rather adopting accepting the state statute to establish a housing trust was one, filing 2 home rule petitions to fund the trust with the real estate transfer fee, and a building permit surcharge were another, and annual appropriations of $500,000 in the meantime to hold things together. That was the plan. We're delighted that that there's been progress made with the home rule petitions. Both have been reported out favorably by legislative committee. So hope is still alive. And the housing production plan is with today's launch on its way to being updated. And we saw that for the long term, we would want to see the housing production plan updated and for us to participate in the process of figuring out just what are the current goals for housing for the town, and where does the trust fit in? Where do each of our groups fit into that plan, and who's going to carry out what? So that's part of it. The other part is that we wanted to have the funding sources, the long-term dedicated funding sources in place to carry out those goals. So we'll be back in the future to the select board with an updated set of policy guidelines, but we're very happy to have this set now in place thanks to all of your input. We're proud supporters, proud financial supporters to the tune of $650,000 for the Assabet River Bluff project. And we are supporting the town meeting articles that are necessary to put the CPA funds and the town's funds in place. So I think that's it. Thanks so much.
Great progress. You guys have done a lot over the last 6 months. Any questions for the Housing Trust? Okay, great. For the Housing Authority?
Sure. Rick Eifler, Concord Housing Authority. We have issued a request for proposals for our Commonwealth Avenue new construction of a single 2-bedroom house. We're looking for an entity to develop one single affordable unit there, and we would the RFP essentially is offering the development rights to that unit on our property, and we have issued it in the Central Register. It's posted on our website. Anybody's curious to take a look at the package, it's a large PDF posted on our website. But it's things people have seen before. It's the same house everybody's seen before. We're just looking for someone else to build it besides us because it's too costly for us to build it. And we have currently one party has pulled the RFP, and that's Habitat for Humanity. So far, no one else. So they may be the only respondent. The due date is April 18th, I think, Jen. Yeah. So we are looking to have a special meeting of the Housing Authority at the end of April to review, assuming we get a response, review that response and see if we want to make a selection to pursue a development agreement with that respondent. So that's Commonwealth Avenue. We're in anticipation of that going well. We also are pursuing a deed clarification on the property to clarify the public housing restriction on our existing Commonwealth Avenue property, to be sure that this project is allowed, so that assuming it's going to be a home for sale, it would pass muster from a title point of view. So we're working on that. It needs to come from DCAM. It's a Massachusetts property originally came from Massachusetts state property. Additionally, we are at the end stages of repositioning 18 of our federal scattered houses into local ownership with project-based vouchers instead of them being a part of HUD. So we would own and control them and rent them with project-based vouchers. And that may happen April 1st, it may happen May 1st, we're not really sure. It keeps getting delayed because it's a very complicated process, and we're one of the first housing authorities in Massachusetts to actually do this. So that's ongoing. If once we get local control of those, that may open up some opportunities for infill housing, little future one-off, one-unit infill housing opportunities on a few of those properties, similar maybe to the way we're doing Commonwealth Avenue, if that turns out to be successful. And then for terms of future development possibilities for affordable housing for the Housing Authority, the League of Women Voters listed quite a few properties that were ours that had potential for development. Some of those are those federal units that we're trying to reposition, so we might be able to do that. The other property, which would be more complicated, would be our Bedford Street state property. It has 8 units of DHCD family housing on it. And but it's a large enough property that if the town were willing to put it on sewer, we could add quite a few more units on that property where the septic system is currently located. So so that may have some potential. I don't know how to begin investigating that with the town. Maybe Marcia has some ideas how we could begin to look at that. Maybe after we've got Commonwealth Avenue up and running a little bit, we could begin to think about that property and see if there's some potential there. There is also some adjacent town land, and I don't know if that enters into the picture or not on that property. But I think that's our one property that has some strong potential. So that's it. That's it for the Housing Authority.
Great, thank you, Rick. Any questions for the Housing Authority or any of those initiatives and projects? Okay, great. So the Concord Housing Foundation?
Thank you,
Rick?
Liz. Yeah, we just finished a board meeting in which we discussed the various warrant articles, and our spring newsletter will come out just before town meeting. And while we won't formally take a position, we will state what those articles do, and particularly where they have an effect, positive or negative, on the possibility of affordable housing. So we are doing that. We have a couple of board members who are taking on the task of liaising with the national park. As you all know, they own a bunch of, from the outside, look reasonably good buildings that are not inhabited at the moment. The Park Service got a major appropriation for maintenance and upgrading. And we're hoping that we can find a way to work with them to get some affordable housing for farmers and farm workers out of that. So, we're sort of trying to carry that link with the national entity there. And we've got two initiatives we just started with a board, one of which is for our younger members to look at how we can get more young people involved in affordable housing activities. The average age of the affordable housing community is a discouraging demographic, shall we say. And we're hoping to get more people involved. And we're also looking at ways in which we might acquire houses from the elderly or from heirs, and I won't bore you with all the details, but we have a number of ideas around the possibility of things like tax relief in return for an option to buy the house at a discounted value, things like that. I don't want to say we've looked at any of them and think they're good, but we figure this is something the foundation should be doing because the folks that are actually running and building housing are kind of busy to do that. And we're hoping to do that as an appropriate function for the foundation. So thank you, Liz. I think those are the main things.
Do you want to do an update on the transfer tax bill?
Yeah, Keith sort of covered that. But the home rule petitions are out. The statewide enabling bill, the deadline for reporting out is May 7th or 9th. So we have some additional time there. Mass General Brigham came out strongly in favor of a transfer fee, not surprisingly, not just for public health reasons, but they own the two hospitals on the islands, and where are the staff going to live? So they're in favor, and we're hoping to get other healthcare organizations behind it. The Globe came out in favor of it for Boston, but not really in favor of it for other towns, which is not, I think, what Mayor Wu doesn't want to have to build all the affordable housing in Eastern Massachusetts. So I'm hopeful that we can swing the Globe. Some of the folks on Nantucket have provided some money to provide professional advice. And if you want to see where we are, we now have over 100 organizations that have endorsed the statewide bill, and you can find that on the website. Oh, and finally, I guess the one thing I didn't say for the foundation is we have committed $100,000 to support the housing on Assabet Bluffs. But like the money that Keith discussed from the trust, the assumption is that that's going to produce 5 units. Thanks.
Great. Nancy, you're on mute.
Still muted, Nancy.
Okay, sorry. We had a question at our meeting that about the housing production plan and its meeting schedule. We have 2 potential volunteers, but they want to know what the time commitment might be. So if somebody could speak to that, that would be great.
Yep, we will get to that coming right up.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yep, nope, that's okay. That's okay. I'm sure Jennifer will talk to that. Okay, thank you, Rich. And I think that Elizabeth was going to give us an update from the planning board perspective. in the zoning for town meeting?
So there's two warrant articles that have housing implications. One is Article 33, which is the Thoreau Depot Business District zoning, which in that for the combined business residents actually sets out in section 7.11.4.4 parameters for affordable housing requirements, being projects between 5 and 10 units will require at least one affordable unit at 80% AMI. Over 10, it requires 20% of affordable units. And so if there's one affordable unit, it's 80% AMI. If there's two, one needs to be at 80%. The other can be between 100 and 100, I think it's 120% AMI. If there is a fractional remainder of less than 0.5, if it's 0.5, it rounds up. If it's below 0.5, then the bylaw has a mechanism that proportional fraction cost, those funds will be put into the Affordable Housing Trust. And so I think that's it as far as the affordability side of that warrant article. The other warrant article deals with the additional dwelling units. In 2020, the town amended the additional dwelling unit requirements from previous special permits, which started in, Marshall, correct me, but I believe it was 1974 was when the first additional dwelling unit bylaw was established. But one thing we found out was that some of the previous criteria before the amendment, one being the special permit for those units expired when the property got sold. The calculation for the size or the allowed size was different. So there could be some units that are greater than the current allowed bylaw, which is 1,000 square feet. There have been other changes in the bylaw regarding setbacks, and what the proposed amendment article, and I think it's 30, I want to say 32. I don't have them memorized yet, which is amazing, but I'm going to say 30. Nope, 31. What this amendment will do is those 4 provisions that are in conflict with the new criteria, any of the special permits that were granted previously and recorded with the Registry of Deeds, that person or the new property owner could reapply for a special permit, and the Board of Appeals, those particular sections, the Board of Appeals can waive those particular sections. So one example is in West Concord, the affordable unit is above the garage, and how setbacks got measured back then, it's slightly different now. Before, you could take 3 feet from one side if you added 3 feet to the other. Then there was an amendment in the zoning bylaw that said that portion of the building that encroached 3 feet into the setback can only be 15 feet tall. So this existing unit that's over a garage, it's higher than 15 feet. So that's another example of that criteria, which the Board of Appeals can waive and allow these additional dwelling units where there was a legal notice in the paper, notification of abutters. The Board of Appeals made the findings that it was not detrimental to the neighborhood, and so the Planning Board felt that those property owners should be able to retain or get a new special permit to keep those affordable units. And the only other Planning Board article is the formula business limitation in the Thoreau Depot. So that's it.
Busy, yeah. Rich has a question.
Well, it's more a comment. Those are the articles introduced by the town. There is a citizen petition that would essentially increase the amount of upland open area on certain parcels being considered a planned residential development. My concern is that potentially raises the cost per unit even further and may provide an incentive for a developer to not even consider a PRD, but just go ahead and build what he can as of right. So I think people should be aware of that. The other thing is we learned last night from the moderator that at least the thorough business district amendment and maybe other zoning changes no longer require 2/3 vote. They now require 50%. Elizabeth, is that true of others or just of the thorough business district because it's near the station?
I would, it's definitely for the Thoreau Depot amendment. And I'll have to go back and check. There's certain criteria that have to be met for that that only 50% vote, and it deals with being in an eligible location, which has to do near transit, and so there's different criteria. But the amendment to the accessory, the additional dwelling unit may also fall in those parameters. We just haven't reviewed that with town council yet.
Thank you.
And the planning board will be discussing all the articles, including the scenic roads bylaw article at their meeting. I think it's April 5th. For the AR required to take a vote and provide a written recommendation to town meeting on whether to take affirmative action, no action, or so that will happen on April 5th. And I would like to, as I mentioned last night at the public hearing, as far as Article 35 is the petition article for the PRD, to Frank's comment about requiring the open space to be even greater puts pressure on the affordable housing side of it, but it also puts pressure on the sustainability requirements, which were recently adopted as well. And all three of those things need to work in concert to have it be a viable, what a developer feels is a viable project. And I agree, when one of those gets shifted too far to the left or to the right, that calls in question whether the PRD bylaw will even be used.
Thank you. Did I see someone else out there?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Moira. I just wanted to know from Marcia and Elizabeth's point of view, as somebody who has totally changed their idea on the Concord Depot because of the diligence that the planning board attaches to their plans like this. What can we do as individuals, but also as a group? Because there's a lot of silly information out there about this. And do you have like a fact sheet? I belong to a lot of organizations or things that balance that in a way that is easy to understand. I think that's part of it, is the ease of understanding.
Right. So since the beginning of, I'm going to say in the last year and a half, as the planning board's been having all of these public meetings and they've had a couple public forums, they have now developed, it's a 7-page frequently asked questions document, which is on the planning board. Also, we set up a dedicated Thoreau Depot Business District bylaw webpage, and that document is on that webpage. based on some of the input from last night, it will be, I'm going to say updated a little bit based on some of the questions from last night. So, that document right there spells out, a lot of the questions that have, been asked. As far as the silly misinformation that's been perpetuated, I think the biggest issue that the board has run into is the constant idea that there is a development project of 97 units, and there is no development project. And the planning board has had to reiterate that numerous times. The consultant at MAPC did a hypothetical to help people understand how the combined business residence and a mixed use would look in concert with the design guidelines. And it's not one project of 97 units. It's a hypothetical build out that doesn't take into consideration on the ground existing conditions. So it just looks at setbacks and the size of the lot and what could happen. Doesn't take into consideration any of the uses or parking. So I think dispelling that information, that should this pass and a project does come forward, at that point, the planning board does its even more due diligence as far as requiring traffic studies, different analysis. And just because the bylaw may pass and the zoning is there to facilitate this, doesn't automatically mean something is going to be built. So I think that would be a helpful.
That's a very good point, because I think people envision mass development in the next 3 years. And I think the one thing I've been trying to say to people who, they don't have the silly information, they're pretty solid in their information, but their concern is how quickly. And what I have said is just look at the other projects like Concord Crossing, where Chenang's is, and the other things that the planning board has been involved with, and how well that you have worked with people to develop things that look nice and are beautiful and are helpful. So I think that's a great point to speak to people who are against it. Nothing's going to happen overnight.
Thank you.
Great. Yep. Thank you for the update. Good. Yeah, you've done a lot of work on that and had a lot of community feedback. Okay, so I think we're going to move into our next agenda item, if we can, for the housing production plan, just to give that ample time. Jen and Delaney, are you still here?
Hi, nice to see you all. Yeah, we'd love to get started on this. So it was great to hear you guys do your updates. So I'm glad we're here for that. Give me a thumbs up if my sound is okay. Everybody can hear me? Okay, good. So we do have a short presentation for you, and then we were hoping we'd have enough time to do a little interactive online activity just to get some preliminary feedback to help guide us as we begin this project. And I did hear someone's question about the schedule, so we're going to go over that as well. And so let's see, are you trying to adjourn by what time, Liz? Do you have any other?
5:30.
5:30. Okay, perfect. And do you have other agenda items?
Nope.
Great. So I can take up the full time.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, good. So let me go ahead and share this. Sorry about that. I think that was, I don't even know what happened, but I'm back. Okay, let me try that again. Okay, good. So you should see my screen now. Just give me a thumbs up if you see it.
Yes.
Perfect. All right, good. So I'm here, Jen Goldson. I'm a planning consultant. I know many of you from either other work or working in Concord in the past, so it's nice to see some familiar faces. And my colleague Delaney is here as well. So we're just going to give a quick introduction of ourselves if you don't know our work. We did help the Regional Services Housing Office with the last 2 HPPs that Concord did. So it's nice to be back for a 3rd time. And our specialties are housing plans and working with housing trusts, as well as doing comprehensive master plans, community preservation plans, and spatial analysis and visualization. And so, Delaney, could you give a quick intro of yourself?
Okay, so I'm on mute for a second. All right, hi everyone, my name is Delaney Almond. I'm a community planner too at JM Goldson, and my background is in international development, and I also specialize in geospatial analytics, mapping, all that kind of stuff, and have experience working on housing production plans, community preservation plans, master plans, all that good stuff. So I'm very excited to be here and get started on this project.
Yeah, and so you'll see me and Delaney sort of sometimes in tag team form throughout this process. So the project scope is to create an updated housing production plan. The Regional Housing Services Office is going to be preparing the housing needs assessment component of the plan. And then we, JM Goldson, will be preparing the development constraints analysis with updated mapping, as well as working with you on the engagement process to create the goals and strategies that you want to incorporate for the next 5 years. And then we'll also create an implementation plan. And so here is the schedule as we've proposed, and some of these dates are not pinned down, but you'll see that it starts today, essentially, and it will run really through December. I don't know if any of you saw any earlier scopes than this, but you may note that the time frame is a little longer than we originally planned for, and it's only because we're trying to avoid doing a lot of public engagement in the middle of the summer. So we're holding the second forum in September, and so that just extended the time frame a little bit from what I think was originally envisioned. But I'll just run you through this in general. I won't go through every single line here, but essentially the first piece is to create an outreach plan for engagement, as well as launch a housing survey. We'll also be holding focus groups in late April, and throughout the course of this early part, even though it doesn't say it in this column here, we'll also be starting the work on the development constraints analysis and the implementation capacity analysis and doing mapping. And I know Liz's group will also be working on the needs assessment at the same time. So that work will all be starting very soon and going into early May. So we'll be working on that for roughly 2 months. And I'm happy to share this. I see someone taking a picture, which you can certainly do as well, but I'm happy to share this PDF if you'd like. And then we'd like to have the first, I don't know if you're calling it a steering committee, but the first oversight group, or whatever it is you're calling the group that's really working with us directly on the project. We'd like to hold a meeting, so it'll be the first meeting after this one, where we go through and really review the work we've done on the report chapters that will be drafted by then. So that would include the RHSO's work as well as ours, and go over that with you, as well as the focus group summaries. So we'd like to just share what we heard through the focus groups as well in a mid-May meeting, and then also prepare for the first public forum, which will have already been outreached and all of that, but we'd like to get input on the content that we're sharing in particular, and the types of interactive activities that we're designing. And then we're suggesting, if we can, find a date that works for the town and everybody involved in the project, to hold the first public forum in late May. And there are 2 public forums scheduled as part of our scope of work. So the first one would be in late May, And then we would want to meet with the committee to review what we learned at that first one. And we'd also like to get your comments on those draft reports that we present to you the month before. And then we'd also want to hold a brainstorm session to just get your juices flowing about strategies that you hope will be considered as part of the planning effort. So that would be in this early June meeting. Then what we'll do is draft up some preliminary goals and strategies for the Oversight Committee to look at, work on public outreach, and of course revise the earlier work as well based on your comments. And then hold that second public forum in early September. So we're missing that July, August period, getting through that and holding it in September. From there, we would prepare a complete draft that incorporates goals and strategies that have been kind of vetted both by the Oversight Committee and of course the internal team, town staff, etc., as well as at the community forum. And then we're also hoping to be able to update the housing needs assessment with any new census data that we're hoping will have been released by next fall. And so that's why you see that there. And then in early October, we'd submit that draft housing production plan of the first complete draft, even though you'll get early chapters in May. We'd have another committee meeting in late October to review that draft, revise it, present to the planning board and select board, revise it based on their comments in December. And then hopefully the planning board and select board will be ready to approve the plan. And we're hoping before the holidays in mid-December, if that timing works for them. And then you would be ready to submit that plan to DHCD by the end of the calendar year. So let me just pause here because we do have a few more slides, but I just want to pause and get any feedback you have on the schedule, on any questions you have, any concerns about the flow of the project. And I can't see everyone, so if you're raising your hand, I think, oh, Keith, I see your hand is raised.
Hi, thanks, Jen, and good to see you. Good to be on the same side of the table. Usually we're sitting next to each other at a conference or something. So thanks. Good to see you. I had a question about with how the federal census, the timing of federal census data might impact this schedule, and also is there any risk that's been identified since our housing production plan expired last year, and the census figure may bring us below 10%. What risk are we at with this time frame versus a more expeditious one?
Yeah, it's a good question, and you're right on the edge. I mean, the DHCD, as you know, hasn't released their official percentage just because the 2020 census has not been fully released and they don't have the seasonal units, so that they can't basically figure out what the year-round units are right now because they don't have all the information. So until that information is released, which Liz, you can correct me if you've heard something new, but I don't think it'll be released before next fall. Have you heard anything new on that? Okay. So we are anticipating that after that census data is released next fall, and we're only like hesitant to say when it will definitely be released because we kept thinking there were definite dates that the census data was being released and then it kept being moved. And so that's the only reason I'm hedging on. I'm not sure when it will be released exactly, but we think it'll be next fall. DHCD would then adjust those next, I assume, as soon after that release as they can. And I can't speak for DHCD to say how quickly they would move on that, but they can't really do it before that data is released. So according to just the numbers that we have, you're right on the edge. So if this number is a little wrong, you could be under that 10%. So I guess I can't answer your question in terms of risk, but I can say that until DHCD has the access to the data and can release the official percentage, your number will stay unless any units come off. That's the only thing. We don't have the data to know that if any units are expiring before then or at risk of not meeting their timelines to getting their building permit or their occupancy permit. So that's my only caveat that Marcia or maybe Elizabeth may know the answer to off the top of their head. But if your figure stays current at 10.41% until DHCD releases their new figures, we think that you'll be okay. But if anybody wants to correct me or elaborate on that, I would love to give the floor away for a moment. Okay, so I didn't say anything wrong as far as anybody
So
knows.
I can just
Okay.
say, I mean, we talk a lot about the SHI in Concord and have all sorts of numbers that might be a little bit different than this, but the basic concept is the same, where it's very close and we don't know how the census is exactly going to come out. This Jennifer has like a little bit above, other numbers might have it a little bit below. There's no projects that are going to be dropping off in the denominator. The risk in the denominator are the confidential units from the Department of DSS units that vary and with no town information. So, and then there's the Junction Village building permits, which would bring 83 new units to the numerator around the same time that the DHCD and the census data is due to be published. So there's a lot of uncertainty and action around this number.
Yeah, great. Ken, any follow-up questions before I go on to Stefan?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, I saw Stefan's hand next, and then I also see Linda, but Linda, are you wanting to comment on this specific point?
I was.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So on a number of I keep reading and seeing references to a number of other communities that are talking about the number of housing units based on the 2020 census. So where are they getting their information?
Well, we have that's where we did our calculation from. We have the year round, I'm sorry, we don't have year round. We have the total number of units and we know the vacant units. We just don't know the different, there's a way to break down the vacant units into vacant year round because they're just vacant, but maybe they're like for sale or something, but they're not seasonal. And then the seasonal units are not year round. And so it's just that level of, that's my understanding. And Liz and your team, if you have a different understanding than that, jump in, but that's my understanding. And so we're just using the, Delaney, remind me, did you put in the 7,101, is that the total units or minus the vacant units?
I would need to double check, but I think it might just be the total.
Yeah.
The total, it's actually a little bit different than that, but I think what you're talking about, Linda, the total housing units has been published by the census, but that's not the number that DHCD uses in the denominator, as Jennifer talked about. So the number that Jennifer talked about includes the reduction for the seasonal units.
Right. So other communities are just doing a rough calculation, but nobody has an official percentage from DHCD yet. They're just using the data that is available, which isn't it's not what DHCD will base it on.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Is it Stefan or Stephen?
Stefan, that's right.
Stefan.
Thank you. Quick questions. You said you'd make these slides available on your website or via email?
Oh, I can send it to Liz, Marcia, or whoever, and they can email it out to you.
Okay. And then my question was just procedurally, have you done any of these studies post-pandemic for any other towns of comparable demographics or size? And if so, which ones, and are they publicly available yet? Or what's the most recent one that's publicly available if I wanted to get a head start on what your typical report looks like and get
Sure. Okay, so yes to the first part of your question. We've done many of these studies in the middle of the pandemic and more recently as well. When you ask that are comparable in size, that's the tricky part. So we're in the middle of doing Canton, which we just started. We've done Weston, we've done Townsend, which is very small. That one's definitely not comparable. We're doing, did I say Salem? Sorry, I can't remember if I said Salem. Salem is much larger than you and of course more urban and a coastal community, so that one's not really that comparable. We finished up Ipswich as well, kind of in the beginning of the pandemic. I don't think that would be that comparable.
So
Trying to remember,
Weston,
we just
I
did
was gonna say,
Medway. Yeah,
I was
go
going
ahead.
to offer Weston because that also was a partnership with the RHSO and Jennifer's organization.
Sure.
So it might be a good example of when we work together, this is what the report looks like, irrespective of the actual, size and
Population
demographics of
size.
the-
Yeah, that's a good point. And we did Acton and Acton before I think that was just before the pandemic. We finished that one.
We finished it right at the beginning of the pandemic. It was like the summer after the pandemic started.
Oh, okay. Couldn't remember. Yeah. And then we just finished Medway as well. They're just approving it now. Delaney, I can't remember if there's other ones that are more comparable.
I think you've listed all of them.
Yeah.
Sounds like Weston, Acton, and Medway would be the most likely.
Yeah. And Medway, select boards approved, but not planning board. So we can send a draft if you want to look at that one. But happy to send, Weston was done a while ago.
I'll send the Weston one along.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
All right, good. Any other question? Oh, I went to this slide, but I actually had asked questions about the schedule. Any other questions about the schedule or any concerns about the timing of are there other things going on in the community that, would interfere with the timing of the 2 public forums, which would be, probably the most important not to have other major conflicts with? So we didn't pick a date. We just said late May and early September.
Town meeting is May 1st, but that shouldn't be a problem.
So that should be okay. Okay, great. All right, so the person, I'm sorry, I didn't write down who it was, who asked about the schedule and kind of the time commitment. Do you have any other questions now that you've seen this that we can answer to help understand time commitment?
It's me, Moira.
Moira.
Thank you. You're so well organized and so wonderful. It relieves me. It feels like you guys do most of the work, and we're just there to listen and perhaps ask questions or edit certain things that become more directed to our community. Is that correct?
Yes, I think you're also a sounding board for us.
Okay.
We'll put out ideas and we'll want your feedback on substantive things, around how we message certain things in the public forum, for instance, what kind of activities we might develop for the public forum, as well as the strategies and goals. We want to be a sounding board. Are we missing anything? Is anything that we list sound like it's not Concord enough, doesn't sound like Concord enough? So we really want to get like a local feel from you, because we do try to customize the work as much as we can.
That's what I sounded like, and you did a great presentation.
Okay, great.
I would add a few things, if I could. One is for the focus groups, this would be also coming up with the names of people who would be good to invite to focus groups. The other would be to help with outreach for the public forums to make sure that they're, attended and people know about them, and to do your part in that. So it's the outreach, communication, and the focus groups, getting people there.
And I do see Nancy's hand, but I want to have one more comment from Moira. And the other part of your role that we do find very helpful is if you can, feel some ownership over the draft by the time it gets to the planning board and select board, that, you can come to those meetings, you meaning the oversight committee, can come to those meetings and the presentation and talk about why you're supportive of this draft plan and hope that they'll approve it. That's also helpful. All right, Nancy?
At the risk of sounding too literal-minded, the question we had as a group was, how often might we be meeting the steering committee? And it looks like, looking at your chart here, that it would be fairly intense in the beginning, like maybe weekly.
No, not weekly. I think we counted up 5 meetings, Delaney. I'm not counting them fast enough here. Yeah, we would have the very next meeting would be the mid-May meeting.
Okay,
And typically I would plan for 2-hour meetings. If we can do it faster, we will,
right.
but just to hold 2 hours. So there'd be one meeting in May, one meeting in June, and then a meeting in July. So yeah, starting May, it would be May, June, July, once a month. And then you wouldn't have a meeting again.
Late
I mean,
October.
unless you wanted to meet, but not, it wouldn't be in our scope. To hold another meeting in late October. So there'll be a gap between July and October that we would need to meet with you. You may want to meet anyway, maybe with Liz's group or, you know, to talk about outreach, but we wouldn't need to see you again until October. And then we would meet with you. I'm sorry, I said early, but this says late October. I can't read what I wrote here. And then that, I think, would be it. And then it's going to the planning board and the select board.
Okay. Great, that's very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, great. I don't see any other hands. Did anyone else want to talk about this before we get into the activities? Okay, great. All right, so we already covered that slide. So I just copied the goals from the last plan, which you may have looked at recently or not, I don't know. I hadn't looked at it recently, so it was a good refresher for me. And we don't need to go through them all one by one here, but I just wanted to flash them up on the screen just so you can see, you know, sort of what you were aiming for 5 years ago. And through this process, we'll want to understand, you know, how things went over the last 5 years, as well as what has changed in terms of priorities or just new focus, etc. The other thing I did a screenshot here from your prior plan is the strategies. So you had 14 strategies, and we'll learn through this process what has been addressed and what hasn't. And sometimes what we find is, you know, there are a number of things that you did, or maybe you tried to do and couldn't get approval, or the money fell through, or for whatever reason it didn't happen, but maybe it's still relevant. We also learned that maybe there are things that tried and didn't happen, and now you think they're probably no longer relevant or worth continuing to pursue. And then others you may look on here and think, I don't think this one is relevant. Maybe we didn't do it, and maybe it's because it ended up not being relevant. So all of those are in the mix, but we do like to take a look back, not today, but to just understand what happened in the last 5 years with these strategies. And there are probably other things you did that are not even on this list because maybe we didn't think about them, or maybe some opportunities came up that nobody had anticipated at that time. So now I'd really like to hear from you, but what time is it? Okay, so we have about 15 minutes left. So let's see if we can do this in that time frame. I think we can. And if we can't, we'll just end where we are at 5:30. This is just really for us to, rather than going one by one and getting your answers to a bunch of questions, what we'd like to do is more efficiently use your time, but still get information from you and your opinions and your feedback, just in terms of where you are right now. And that's not to say that you can't change your opinions after we go through some of the analysis and start to work through this process. But I just want to get kind of a snapshot of where you are right now. And so we have a few open-ended questions for you to participate. And this is also an example of a tool that we've gotten very familiar with since the beginning of the pandemic, and we had to pivot and do all digital engagement. And so we've really liked this Poll Everywhere platform. And this slide is teaching you how to access it right now. And actually, I'm going to, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Delaney, I can't do it in my screen. Can you grab the URL and just post it into the chat for them? So you can easily just click on the URL and get right into that. Or you can I already saw someone scanning the QR code. That's another way you can access it right on your phone, or you can just text answers. And if for any reason, I know we did not prepare you to do this today, so if you can't do it or don't want to do it, or for whatever reason, just put your answer in the chat and we'll still get your opinion. You just won't try out the tool, which is fine.
We don't have chat. We don't have chat on this.
Oh, I'm sorry, the chat is not open. Oh, okay. I didn't realize it was a closed chat. Okay. So what you can do instead is just email us, and you can just email me if you can't use this feature for any reason. And my email is Jennifer, Jennifer, and then you can see at the bottom of the slide here at jmgoldson.com. So Jennifer@jmgoldson.com. That's just a backup if you can't do this right now. Totally acceptable. Raise your hand if you've already either grabbed the QR code or put the URL in. Okay, great. Okay, I see. Great. Some people have done this already. You can also, if you prefer to do the text, you can. Great. Thank you, Keith. You can text this right now before I even turn the next slide. You just put in your smartphone. This is like the phone number, 22333. And then your message is Gen G. And the capital actually doesn't matter. We just did that so it's a little easier to read. And then you should get a response back saying you're connected to us. These instructions will also be at the top of each slide when I do this. So if you forget or I changed this over quickly and you couldn't remember, it's right here. You can text Gen G to 22333, or you can use that URL. Okay, raise your hand if you feel like you've got this, feel pretty good about what we're gonna do right now, or got it, like you think you've got connected. Okay. All right, so you can go ahead and Delaney's going to be behind the scenes. This is kind of a demonstration for you. What we do is we monitor the responses just to make sure that we're not going to get Zoom bombed, or I guess I don't know what you'd call it on this software, poll everywhere bombed. I don't know. So Delaney's actually back there behind the scenes on a different computer looking at everyone's responses before she allows them to individually come onto my screen. And so you can go ahead and answer in any length you want. You can answer a phrase, you can answer a paragraph if you really want to, or a sentence. There's no limit in terms of the length. And you can answer.
Mine says waiting for Delaney's presentation to begin.
Delaney, you may need to, when you're behind the scenes, to do make it active.
Okay, I will check on that.
Maybe it's just me.
Did anybody else get that message?
Yeah, I have that message too.
Okay. Does it say Delaney's or Jen's?
Delaney's.
Delaney's.
Okay.
That's weird. I got a response, if you guys see that coming in. So whoever submitted that was
Who did that? That's Keith. Keith, did you get the same message about Delaney's thing not working?
No, I went to the app though. I didn't text in. I went to the app and downloaded it.
Okay.
And then entered Gen G for the name of the poll.
Yeah.
That's strange because it shouldn't be my poll. Let me see.
I did not download an app. I simply scanned the QR code and it took me to pollev.com, but there's nothing to type a text in. I'm still waiting for Delaney's presentation to begin.
Okay.
And
Can you
Jen,
type in pollev.com/Gen G?
Ah, read that.
I think that's what the problem is, Delaney. I think the QR code needs to be updated. So if you type in pollev.com Gen G, hopefully that'll work. Jennifer Polito, is it working for you now?
Yes, I just went on through Safari and now I see it.
Perfect. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, the QR code says Delaney and instead of.
Yeah,
Chdc.
okay. We need to fix the QR code. So hopefully most of you can get it now. All right, good. So we're already getting some things here. And so what this does is it gives us a written record of people's thoughts. And the way it works is that, we also allow Q&A throughout a public forum, like traditional Q&A, where we promote them to be able to speak. But first we do these open-ended comments. And what we find is, number one, we then get a written record of what people think. And number two, it also actually usually makes the Q&A at the end a little more concise, because most people feel that they've already said their piece by the time they get to the open Q&A. Great. Great. And you're seeing these on my screen, right? Come through?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, good. So I'm going to go ahead and move over to the next question. So the next one, what are the biggest issues? And some of these may be similar to what you said, like someone said funding already. But what are the biggest issues you think the town needs to overcome to meet those housing needs?
This morning they had a disagreement over whether the canopy was going to go down or what. And then two of them
And the other nice thing about this, when it works, and we'll fix that QR code, is that people can share and don't have to feel like they're on the spotlight, which is good and bad, and sometimes, but people can be, I think they don't have to worry about the politics necessarily of what they're saying, because nobody in this meeting knows who said what. Okay, so we're starting to get some things in. So money, citizen support, and less resistance to development. Yeah. Okay, so money is a big one. Buy right near commuter rail stations, yeah. So the high cost of land and construction. So I'm just curious with the housing choice legislation and the MBTA community requirements. I'm assuming that that's what this comment here is talking about. When I click on it, I don't know why, but it gets huge. And I'm just curious. Maybe Marcia or Elizabeth could answer this. Where does Concord stand on addressing a plan for complying as an MBTA community?
Well, right now, we're still just reviewing the guidelines. The guidelines are, we don't have a 50-acre site.
Yeah.
And so their criteria are unattainable and are untenable in Concord. I don't think that, as it stands right now, with what has been proposed at this point in time, that Concord will be in any position to move forward. However, I do think we are looking at some of these different options and opportunities, and many of the things that you are reading here. We would love to be able to do it. We appreciate the changes in the town meeting requirements that when you have housing as part of proposed zoning bylaw amendment, when it is near a transportation node, that we can look at a majority rather than that super majority. So that will be beneficial for the community moving forward. And I think coming out of the housing production plan and the work that you will be doing with the town, we may be able to even promote a more positive public opinion about what that housing might look like and be.
Great, that's very helpful. All right, great. So let's go on to, and I think this is the last one. What opportunities can Concord leverage to address housing needs? And I heard you talk about a bunch of initiatives here already. All right, are we getting some responses, Delaney?
Not yet, but I'm sure they're coming in.
Okay, you guys are thinking about it.
One of the things that, if I may just take the podium at
Yeah,
this
of
point,
course. Of course.
you know, I have worked for the town for going on 36 years. And when I started with the town, we were working on the Emerson Annex Affordable Housing Project, which was for 11 units of housing. And at that point in time, we were less than 2% of our affordable housing needs. So over the course of 35 years, we achieved that 10% and we've maintained that 10%. And so I'm really proud of this community and the work that it has done. And we have tried to take advantage of almost every opportunity that is out there. The latest being the Assabet River Bluff project, where the affordable housing interests and the open space interests came together. And it was super challenging. The pushback that we received from the neighborhood was really, really challenging. So we limited the number of units that could be developed because of the neighborhood. And now we're getting feedback from town meeting process that, well, why can't we have 6 units there? So it's just been very interesting to go through this process and see what public opinion, how that drives a lot of the choices that are made.
It's a great point. All right, great. I see a lot of great messages here. A couple about 2229 Main Street and messaging, which Marcia was just pointing out about public opinion. Coordination. Yeah, and actually, I just want to say, I should have said this right away. I'm really impressed that you have this roundtable to begin with. Talk about coordination. I don't think I've worked with any towns that have something like what you do, and I guess it sounds like you meet twice a year, which is fantastic. Great. The Peabody site. And we'll learn where these sites are as we go through the process. Expanded sewer capacity. Yeah, this is helpful. All right, I'm going to go ahead and shut this down. If you didn't see your answer pop up, it might just be because it's still in the cloud trying to get over to my computer from Delaney's approval. All right. So that was really it. And I just want to be respectful of your time. It's almost 5:30, but this was just sort of a light introduction for you. And it's helpful for us to hear some of these thoughts that you've shared with us today as we start to learn what you've been doing in the past 5 years and start to get into this process. And so I think with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And, you know, Delaney and I are happy to stay on if you'd like us to, if you have questions or anything like that. We don't have to scoot right at 5:30, but I just know that you were trying to wrap up then.
So I wanted to offer too, I know that for the groups represented here, that they've, offered a member of their group to participate in this lowercase steering committee. And so I'm going to provide those names to Jennifer, and the next meeting will get scheduled in that way. So, and I just want to mention that I'll be posting those as an open meeting, even though it's not a quorum of any group, or it's not a subcommittee, but just to be sure that that there's no concerns in that regard.
Great.
Okay.
I think that's it for tonight. And thank you very much for Liz for scheduling this and for everyone to be here. Much appreciated. Anything further, Liz?
Yeah, Stefan had something.
Do the respective boards have to close their official meetings with a motion?
Oh, yes,
to
thank
adjourn?
you. Thank you.
If so,
Yes.
I'll lead the pack with Concord Housing Authority. Move to adjourn.
By the second. Is anybody still here from the Concord Housing?
Second.
Oh, Stephanie. Okay, Stephanie seconds. All those in favor, Rick Eifler, aye. Stefan Bader.
Aye.
Charles Phillips. He's there. Charles. Did he wait? Okay.
No, he's there and muted. There he is. Yep.
There we go. Okay. Stephanie, did I do you?
Aye.
And is Ed still here?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, but we have a majority there, no matter what. We're adjourned. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lee,
CHDC to entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting.
I
Peter
think
still
you're
here?
it. I think Peter left already.
We're adjourned.
Video of one.
Keith,
Yeah, and the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust, I'll take a motion from one of our members to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Rich Feely, looked like
Second.
a second by Mike Lawson. Roll call vote, Linda Escobedo,
I agree. Thank you, everyone.
Mike Lawson,
Agree.
Rich Feely,
Aye.
and Keith Bergman. Aye, we are adjourned. I'm going to stay on the call with Jen, if that's okay to ask a question or two. Thanks.
Bye, everyone. Thanks very much.
Right.
Everybody.
So Liz, did you tell Jen who the representatives are, or?
I'm just doing that now. I'm
Okay.
just, yes, I got you. I think I have everyone, if I don't have from the Housing Foundation.
We have 2 volunteers. I need to sort it out. I think it will be Moira if she's willing to do it. But I should talk to her before I commit her.
That's okay,
I'm
Fred.
gonna get back to you.
I'll do it.
Okay,
Can,
all right.
can you send me your, Maura, can you send me your email or Rich? Can you send me-
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'll send it to you.
Perfect.
Thank you, Liz.
At the Housing
That's
Trust,
just-
all
that's-
5 of us wanted to be on, and we figured a way, because Rich can do it from the foundation. Linda is the liaison to all things housing from the select board. Carrie's the town manager and can sit wherever she wants, whenever she wants. And Mike and I are so we're the designated members. So you see all 5 of us.
So,
Humbled by the company.
So Rich, you said 2 people, so it's
Well,
Maura and-
I'm making it, the other is our treasurer, and I'm trying to distribute
Okay.
responsibilities here. So
Yeah.
if Moira wasn't sure she could do it, but absent a palace uprising, that's the decision.
Okay, great.
Okay. Do you want to talk to the rest of us, or you've got other business?
I had a question for Jen. I was really intrigued by the question about what's happening post-COVID, and just what are some of the themes are emerging. I know for us here, I really think if you look at the 2015 housing production plan, I think that among the missing pieces are, well, the funding strategy that came to the 2019 town meeting from the Affordable Housing Funding Committee was just huge. I mean, that was a groundswell. That was a citizen petition, I think, article in 2017 to study what do we need to get serious about housing. And that's just colossal, and sort of brought us to where we are. And now the thing we're really wrestling with is, what do we do if we get that money? And I'd have to say, we were afraid to give an answer absent the money. Number one, lest people's expectations get up. But I think if with so many communities, Boston, Provincetown, Nantucket, Somerville, along with Concord and others, going after real estate transfer fee funds, what does it look like to be doing that in the context of a housing production plan? I mean, it's the next generation, it's the next leap, it's the huge leap we want to take, far beyond just 10%. Okay, 10%, the subsidized housing inventory, 10%, check, big check mark, got get that, we'll one way or another stay above it. But the town's goals are so far beyond that. And so we're trying to manage, how do you do that? And I really think that that's the biggest change. And the fact that so many communities now, maybe it's because we all this during COVID, we've had all this time to sit around and think about what do we really want to do. And it's big, you know, it's and so I think that's probably a main challenge for us. And I don't know if there's anything going on in other communities of how are they, what are they, you know, what plans are they developing to spend big money if they get it? Because that's the problem we hope to be able to solve here.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think, you know, communities are thinking about the ARPA funds. And Salem is the only community I'm working with currently that is at least open to talking about the real estate transfer fee idea. No, you know, no commitment if it does get enabled. I mean, the biggest change, and this is not exactly what you're asking me, but the biggest change I've seen through COVID and post, you know, where we are now, which isn't really post-COVID, but at least later on in COVID, is that people seem to have broadened their understanding of housing needs. And I find more support because I think of the general greater awareness that our society's undergone through the pandemic, seeing how vulnerable populations really struggled and were hit. And then just the greater awareness of social equity and responsibility as well, that comes with those disparities that have, I find that in communities that we're working with now, we're able to talk about race and disparities and social justice and housing as a human right, more so than, you know, even 5 years ago, definitely more so than 10 years ago. If I said anything like that with relation to housing, I'm sure I would never have been hired again, to be, you know, quite frank. But I find that people are more open to that, which I think opens some political avenues potentially as well, when people start to make those connections that I don't think they made, you know, years ago. So that doesn't answer your question about what do people do with a lot of money.
Yeah, no, it's an important part of the answer of how have we been changed? How has our society been changed by this collective grief that we've gone through, and part of it really is, you know, I underscore it completely what you're saying about you know, the historic you know, where did zoning come from? And it's not pretty. So let's take a look at what we need to do to be the sort of society that we want to be and probably should have been all along. So thanks for that.
Can I ask a question?
I just want to echo what Marcia had said earlier is you know, the community openness to development in general, but also affordable housing is pretty strong. So that the density is really small, right? Like very small projects is really what the community can support. So and in the very small projects, there's very limited public subsidy. Public subsidy likes to go with denser projects. So it eliminates public subsidies from being invested in the projects here in Concord. So they're all have to be locally funded. So that puts more, that's why you heard so much about money, because there's no public subsidies because the density is so small.
And I think as young people try to buy homes and they're, you know, see what affordable means, even in rents, they realize that we're not talking about cheap housing here, really, or starter housing. It's expensive. A one-bedroom affordable can go for as much as $2,000 a month. in some communities. So I think people's understanding of what affordable means is changing. And I had a question for Keith. Keith, just, I don't know if you can project, but just based on what you know so much about the transfer issue, what do you ballpark seeing Concord gaining from that per year?
Well, the figure that we cite is the Affordable Housing Funding Committee's number. What did they tell town meeting in 2019? And they said $2.6 million. And I haven't looked behind that curtain, but that was the order of magnitude of what they were projecting from all the great work that they did. That's the total of projected total of a building permit surcharge and a real estate transfer fee. But anyway, that's a number, that's a reference that we have. In fact, we put it right in our guidelines of how to background information of what do we hope the long term looks like, and we hope it looks like that.
Thank you.
Let me just say, Maura, that looking at the data from 2012 to 2017, it looked like between $1 and $2 million per year, with a $600,000 floor, but with the median sale price up close to $1 million. It's certainly more now unless we push the floor up.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to jump off, but really nice to see you. If I say end, is that just gonna be me? Marcia's here, right? So, okay, I'm just gonna leave the meeting. Okay, very good. Okay.
Thank
bye,
you,
everybody.
Elizabeth.
I thank
Thank
you,
you.
Liz.
I have to leave.